seemingly high pressure environment. So yeah, I'm really honored and glad to be here. So who are you all four going to be playing today?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have quite a fair bit of time. So, but for now, let's say I'll allocate maybe around. I think 20 minutes would be a safe time to just sort of have, and then in case some other people drop by, then if there's any time remaining, we can have some open discussions about some of the topics that we've addressed in many of the repertoire. Surely there's going to be similarities. And then we can have some Q&A sort of things as well. So who would like to go first? Any?
All right, I'll do it.
So Tim, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I don't have separate music for you.
Oh, that's
It's the Grieg Nocturne, so you probably know it.
Wonderful. I haven't played it, but I have heard it before. Do you mind if I sit?
No, it's fine. That's a little more pressure.
What are you playing, Tim?
The Grieg Nocturne.
From his lyric pieces.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's Opus 54, number 4 of the lyric pieces. Since we have time, I'm just getting comfortable.
I asked this because there's a high level of sophistication regarding the. You could hear that, right? You could all hear many different dimensions and layers in the music, and that's the really cool thing about piano, compared to any other instrument, is that you can actually create this almost like microcosmos of like mini small world of layers and emotion and everything all by yourself. Yeah, it just draws us in, and that was some very sophisticated playing. One thing that I thought overall was very, very nice was balance between the three layers at the beginning. You set this nice bass line going very linearly. Actually, it was not vertical at all, and had this really nice, almost nightingale-like sort of motive happening in the right hand. And so I thought that was, yeah, that is right.
Yeah.
Yes, you're doing both of that. Yeah. And I thought that was very, very well done. A couple things that I think that I can help you with is probably that slightly more trickier middle section. And maybe trying to make these, whenever you have this 2 against 3 rhythm going on, and making it a little bit more flexible. The rhythm is correct, for sure. Sometimes it feels like we get, as soon as we start getting to 3 against 3 against 2, it feels a little bit more like, oh, we're just trying to be really faithful to the polyrhythm. So that we can try to get a little bit more resistance and turbulence into the relationship of the rhythm, then maybe we can achieve climaxes a little better. So sometimes here, and on the towards the end when we do get that double forte. Yes. Before that, let's have a look at this più mosso section again. And yes, it's tricky because your left hand spans very wide arpeggios and your right hand's doing some complicated double note things. Good news is that there's a lot of repetition, right? So can I ask you one time to see if we can try play for the beat 1 here? Can we just play bass? And once we also and then play this in blocked chords.
Okay. Blocked chords.
This in blocked.
Okay.
This one in just bass note, and this one with the blocked chords. Only the left hand bass notes, yeah. Yeah, just until then. So if you get comfortable doing that, then you won't be so concerned about what notes exactly you have to get to the next one. Of course, this one you do have to.
Yeah.
You have to do this motion. Let's try that one more time. Yeah. these 4 lines at Carnegie Hall, New York,
Mhm.
how would you spend those 15 minutes?
Actually, that would help a lot.
Okay. Like reducing,
Just knowing where I'm going.
oh yes,
Yeah.
like consciously, like knowing which position you're going to be locked into
Right.
each time you jump, right? And also, one really good practice method that I've been told by multiple teachers actually, and actually the first teacher I heard this from, I didn't really believe it too much until I started hearing it from the second teacher, and that's when it started getting really kind of scary. It was something to do with, have you ever done something called like beat to beat or bar to bar practice?
I probably have, but I don't know if I.
It's a very simple concept, but actually, it's actually very difficult to continue doing, and it initially feels like, what's the point of this? Can I just show you
Sure.
an example of what I would call beat to beat practice? In this case, because it's in 6/8, we're just going to call a beat, a quarter.
Mhm.
And then, so what you would do is start and have an exact point of where you're going to stop. So if I want to start here, I will make sure that I stop here. So I'll play from beat 1 to beat 2. Just that. And so you get used to this connection of the left hand. And then once you feel like that's ready for Carnegie Hall, you move on.
Mhm.
And then you play from beat 2 to beat 1 of the next measure. And this is usually the trickier part because you're not used to starting in the middle of the measure.
Right.
And this does wonders for all of like, there's actually a textbook written about this method. I can't remember, but it was very scientific too. It was like very like all the like pathways, blah blah, like connecting the neurons, all that
More
stuff.
synapses.
Oh yes, especially this one. So it's good to practice that beat to that beat, and then you carry on connecting each beat like that. And if you can do that fluently and you're confident that you can walk up, as my first teacher would say, walk up on Carnegie Hall, just play that bow, leave. Pretend that that's the
Right.
level of like focus and like
Mhm.
detail you'll need to put into just playing that one beat. Then it does wonders for connecting things together, and it develops a different sense of fluency than playing it straight through from this measure to the end of the page. Like maybe even 100 times. You might see more results doing this beat to beat practice for maybe even 15 minutes. Let's try a little bit of that.
Okay.
It's just so that you get a glimpse of that fluency. So let's try beat 1 and then stopping exactly at beat 2. Right? Okay, now let's try beat 2 to beat 1. This is going to be a little bit tricky. Okay, so let's aim to try to get that movement smooth. Ba 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 ba. Nice.
And then next.
Yep. And then beat 1 to beat 2. So this
Oh,
is.
same.
Yep. So this is all. Yeah. So thankfully it's the same stuff now. Good. And we're going to start here to here. Let's try that one again. So this one's slightly different to this one because you're at a different destination point.
Right.
So we need to stop on the
Right.
beat. That's the tricky part. Yeah. Then we start on that beat. And then you would stop on the next beat. Yes. Let's try this beat to this beat.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Just that. Okay, one more time. There we go. Right. Then carry on. Here to here. Oh, and you need to stop on that. Yes. Forces you to know where you're going. Yes, stop there. Now, then that tells you that this is the one that needs to be practiced a little more.
Right.
Okay, let's try that. Maybe this one maybe 2 times. You did the color change very nicely. That I thought was very nice. Okay.
What, just tell me what else you would,
So yes, that's the one thing that,
this is
Yeah.
the,
and if you do that even 5 minutes a day, or even less than that, you'll find very subconsciously this will become very secure in your fingers and mental.
I can vouch for it, it works.
And I'll just briefly demonstrate a couple of things.
okay,
Let me show you.
sure.
When you do have this this sort of pattern where you have this melody going. Experiment sometimes with pushing and pulling the tempo. So right now it's a little bit on the very almost
Regular
meditative.
side.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would suggest maybe sometimes trying speeding up a little bit at the beginning. And then arriving at a sort of like languid sort of feeling as well, or the opposite. So, and trying out both ways actually gets you closer to what you actually want, rather than being restricted by, oh, this is the rhythm and I'm going to play the rhythm. So there's this lower one. Those two things, so one's a practice method and one's sort of like try to experiment with flexibility, with speed. I think that will really take this piece to the next level, although it is very high and detail and sophistication. I was expecting to talk more about like layers and textural balance, but actually you've got that sorted. So I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to ruin or taint that at all. But no, thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple more people. So we have Michelle and
Emily.
Emily, okay. And will you both be playing as well today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's.
Mines are short though.
Yes. 5 people. Okay, we can stick to around 15-ish, 15 to 20-ish minutes. Okay, good. So where you want to go next? Okay.
I'm playing the Chopin Waltz.
Ah, okay.
We can.
I can, whichever copy you
It's the
prefer.
same copy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Maybe I can look at that one then. stuff. And
Yeah, it is.
I remember when I was learning this piece, the middle section made me not want to learn it because there were too many ties, too much counting.
Oh, this one?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I
I
was like,
struggle so bad.
what's going on
I am
here?
still struggling.
That's the one part that made me not want to continue learning the piece.
Yeah, I'm still struggling with that.
Oh, no, you're doing a very, very fine job of, you're doing a very fine job of not making the piece sound repetitive.
Okay.
Did everyone notice how whenever we heard familiar material, yes, it was the same material, but there was some different feeling, some different stress about how each phrase was said. One particular place of note is how you played the beginning and how you played when that beginning theme returned.
Right.
Here, there was a sense of I'm back, I'm back, and here it's like here I am, and this is like after all this turbulence and journey and turmoil, I've now come back to face reality. Yeah, there was this real sense of return, which I thought was very very good, because usually when you have Chopin waltzes, some scherzos are like that too. A lot of Chopin works seemingly, in today's terms, is like copy and paste. There's a lot of that going on, especially in the waltzes. You're like, oh, you just did the same thing again. Oh, it's the same thing again. But trying to bring out that different nuance is something that I thought was very, very well brought out in this particular performance. So the one thing that I think that we can probably work on, that will probably refine a lot of what vision you have for this piece, are actually two things. One is sort of left-hand balance compared to right hand, and sometimes right-hand legato. So legato is a topic that's a little bit controversial sometimes, because hand is hitting strings, right? And so how do you play smoothly, right? It's all to do with trickery of the ear. But there is, even though there are piano technicians and actually very like piano enthusiasts that say, oh no, there is no difference in connecting with the hands and you playing the pedal down just like playing the notes with a pencil. But for some reason, there is a level of, so let me show you an example. So if I was to play, what's a nice, for example, this line. If I play, technically the sounds are connected, right? And I'm just pedaling through each one, and the hand is probably just like, oh, the dampers are like, the relationship between dampers and the actual notes seemingly make it, oh, that's legato, and then playing it without pedal does it. And people say, yeah, there's almost no difference in terms of actual connection. But the legato that I think that now you can develop, because actually a lot of the finger passages have been worked out very nicely. You have good fingering and you have good movement around the different complicated positions. So the one thing is, first of all, we need to learn how to use everything that we have in terms of arm weight. So it's quite, believe it or not, even a child's arm can get a very rich, deep tone, because it's not, doesn't require too much weight to actually create a very, very, very loud sound. Just ask a child to drop their hand from this height, and you'll be surprised at how annoyingly loud that is, right? And so we don't actually have to exert too much muscular pressure onto the key in order to get a big, rich sound. So in passages where we want legato, what I like to feel like is having all this weight at rock bottom. So if I was to, for example, if I was to start on fourth finger on G sharp, I know that later on it comes to Vesta. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. I like to start from the bottom of the key. So what that feels like is, if this floor represents bottom of the key, right? And of course, maybe the key, the top of the key is maybe somewhere like here or something. And say this is my entire body weight. at rock bottom. It's like an anchor. And to get the sticky kind of legato that sounds kind of like, and then people will describe that as more like, oh, that was a luxurious legato. What you'll feel like is you'll have 100% of your arm weight on that note. And then when you get to the next note, it's not rather like you take off the weight and then you like reapply it to the next note. It's rather, there is a slow transfer. So this is my next finger. And then like transferring that weight onto this key. So there is no actual space to breathe. I'm using too many different metaphors at the same time. But like, it's talking about swimming and they're talking about, yes. And so it will feel like if my feet are my fingers, very smoothly connected. At no point is my body weight ever not 100% somehow connected to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And this creates a real sense of sticky legato. And will make people go, something about your sound mix sounds different. Like it doesn't sound like you just play, it sounds like there's like this nice stickiness to the tune, or something like that. And then once you sort of get comfortable with that, you can start experimenting with different types of sounds on the piano as well. And the reason why this works, if we do go into it technically, is that it changes the way you attack each note. So before, when we just play and reapply similar pressure to each note, our sort of mentality is that, oh, this note is around this volume, then this volume, this volume, this volume. Whereas once we start actually feeling this weight, and we're just like, just slowly moving this weight around across the keys, it changes the way we want to attack that note and the way we put that note into this sort of dynamic spectrum. Yeah? Can you hear a difference? Okay. If it didn't, then I'll be like, maybe I need to work on it more. So let's try a little bit of that right hand. So when we go to the più mosso, just very slowly around that speed, and first let's just drop our full body weight, or arm weight, on that G sharp and really feel rock bottom.
Not on the finger, right?
So you'll feel like your finger, first of all, yes, you have very good alignment. So yes, this joint, this knuckle bridge is what's going to help you feel that from the arm weight on that key. Yeah. And then you're going to slowly shift that weight around, yes. Good. Yes, and there might be a little bit like 0.2 seconds of overlap between each note, which is okay at this speed. Good. Good, and it makes you listen to the connections between each note, and that actually helps you get the right physical motion. Of course, when we get faster, we lighten that up more, but that's the foundational movement. Let's just try maybe a few measures, maybe 4 measures of that.
Slow.
Slow, yes. So just feel like there's no vertical attacks, everything horizontal. Just spreading weight across the keys. Yeah, some maybe just that fragment. Let's try that one more time, maybe a little faster. Very nice. So from the audience's perspective, what sort of effect does that have?
It just flows better. Sort of like,
Flows better?
yeah.
And one thing that I hear very intently is that I hear that you're listening.
I'm trying to.
Yes, I hear that you, as the performer, in this current moment, is listening to the connections between each note immensely intensely. And what that does is makes me listen intensely. And it makes it really, really convincing with that It's like, oh, what a nice right hand sound.
Mhm.
And what nice intervals, what nice connections, what a wide space between that note and that note. Rather than like some digital information like da 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 da, which we often hear younger kids speak and make it into a speed demon competition. Yes, they're like Puma, so yeah, and then just like play it as fast as possible. So if you can practice right hand like that, it will help the way you listen to the florid passage work. But know that when we do get faster, you can lighten up, but you can have that same thing in your ears of like this sticky sort of sound. All right?
Do you play this part of the singer because it's
Pianissimo.
and it's not short
Yes.
passages? So do you play it the same way or?
I recall, I probably didn't play very well, but if I were to ask myself now, how would I do that? So, Wei just asked a really, really good question about structure and phrasing. In this particular waltz, we had the same material almost repeated exactly twice, but with different slurs and phrasing. Yeah, let me just show you. It was really nice. I just want to show that. Yes. So if you all have a look at this page, you'll notice that this and this is pretty much copy and paste. The only difference is that this says pianissimo. There are no decrescendos on every single measure, and the slurs are a little bit different. This one's a little more long term. So you should have to start to wonder, what did Chopin mean by that? Like, first of all, oh yeah, okay, this one, he just wants everything to have this sort of this sort of nice contour and gesture. And then here, just because we didn't write that doesn't mean we don't do this nice sort of contourist gesture. But it seems like he writes a slur from here all the way to the end of that. So, okay, so if that's one phrase, then that means I have to try to make some sense of continuous direction to that very end, not chop it up into like one or two measures, right? So yes, there would be a difference in how you would play it, and it actually is mostly a mental thing. So sometimes più mosso can mean two things. Sometimes it means immediately like more movement, but sometimes it means speeding up. And so once we get out of this first section, we can sort of ease in, as you've actually been doing, easing it in more and focusing more on the connections between the bass and the soprano. Don't have a G sharp down here. G sharp. Okay, so you can start to see more of like vertical framework. Then here, everything a little more continuous. So you will have less downbeat accents. Everything will feel much more driving forward. Can we try maybe the first four measures of the first più mosso and really listening to how the bass line moves? Okay. Yeah, something like that, yeah. I can tell you. Let's try that one more time. Great. Then I would say that's a fairly ideal way to play the first one. Yep. Now let's try the second one, where you feel like we're not chanting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's a different type of waltz. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way till the end of that thing. And here it's really, in order to create that sense of, that was already, I could tell that you were trying to avoid this 1, 2, 3, 1, like this waltz sort of typical rhythm. Here it's more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, sort of continuous. And you can have a bit of a crescendo. And that will create an illusion of you actually going forward with the phrase. even though you're not going on with a crescendo from pianissimo to piano, piano to mezzo piano, but this minuscule crescendo will help you not sound like you're plateauing. Okay, you're gonna try it from here again. So here, the trick is to not try to sound like you're restarting again.
Oh,
So,
okay.
da, 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 da. So it's like, you're,
That way.
and then trying to keep that tension, and then here you can find the rhythm. And then that will make this sound so much more meaningful. It's like, now we can breathe, yeah? But I think you understood that
Yes,
concept
yes.
very, very clearly. Just for time's sake, I think we do have to move
Yes,
on.
yes.
But very, very good job.
Good.
So, Gabriel, would you like to join us? Oh, wonderful.
No, I think it's a little.
So I'm playing the Gershwin piano prelude number 1. It's a reach for me.
Bravo, bravo. It's a fun piece, but it's also very tricky, right? Oh, it's yes. I haven't learned this either, but I've always wanted to learn it. My teacher from previous teacher has one of my favorite recordings of this. I think it's on YouTube. Have you heard of Andre Watts? He was my previous teacher at Indian.
Oh!
Yeah, okay.
I was with him for 4 years, and he plays these preludes. He plays the heck out of these preludes. He plays all three on, I think it's live on YouTube. And the groove that he creates, there's just so much fun to it, and spice to all the different sharps and accents and things that it creates. And I think you all already getting a sense of that. The thing that will help you create that is a more objective pulse, I think. So there are moments where I feel like, oh, I know that you want to go faster, but this certain thing is like making me, this thing's a bit tricky, so it's making me a little bit hesitate or something like that.
So you have a definite maximum safe speed.
Oh, I think that's everyone, right? Yeah. Everyone can relate to that. It's like, oh, at 2 p.m. I can play this speed, at 1 p.m. maybe not that speed. It depends what I eat that morning, like environment, we become very sensitive beings when we have to deal with speed with certain pieces. There's a couple cool things that I think will make the intro sound a little bit more interesting. To my knowledge, Cole 8 thing, so whenever there's yes, down right, but Cole means width. So actually, let me show you what, so we have the, you've been playing this, right, it's actually, yeah, it's cool, right? So we have, it's actually octave bass. So calling with the bass. I don't know exactly, yes, I don't think it's sustained until here. Yeah, it's just at each one. So here you can play big fat octaves down there.
Okay.
Yeah, you want to just give it a go, just see what that
Aren't
feels
you
like?
partial pedaling that bass though?
I am pedaling that bass. Yes.
But you're partial pedaling it.
Yes, I was. Yes,
Okay.
it was like,
So that's the difference. So it kind of rings and then
then once I play the chords, then you don't-
disappears, but it
yes.
doesn't disappear completely.
No,
Yeah.
yes. So it must have been a habit thing, yeah. That's very
I missed it, I'm sorry.
nice. So once I think your groove
Yeah.
for this is very great.
Okay.
This comes sometimes a little bit as a bum, 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 bum. Take your time getting into that octave. So really make that into the beginning of each measure. So 1, ba, 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 ba.
Can I do it my original way?
Sure.
This part.
Yes, something like that in terms of the rhythm. So what you want to feel like is that not being the result of you playing that chord. So instead of playing bum, 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 like that's not the, rather than having that as a consequence of you playing that chord,
Oh, really? Okay. Because I thought it kind of was.
could be in terms of momentum,
Yeah.
but I want you to feel like that is just as important. Because some almost feels like it's an afterthought a little bit. So if you do it too much, like pa pa, then it sort of seems like
Yeah.
there's lack of that downbeat sort of groove.
Okay.
It got better and better as you repeated it. So you don't necessarily have to delay it so much. You just have to have the mentality that it's the beginning of the measure. So the rhythm is. Oh. Yeah. So it's almost like a dotted 8 and then 16 and then to 8, right? So bum, bum, and 1, bum, and 1 instead of and 1, and 1. So the 1, you're not trying to mask that the 1 is strong. And playing the octave will help you feel that.
Okay.
Yes, because it'll feel stronger.
Okay.
Because before it was just 1 note versus 5 notes, right?
Yeah.
And so it feels like this is a lot more important and powerful. Yeah.
Yep.
Then that's gonna set up all the left hand stuff that goes on. This is tricky, right?
Yes, very tricky.
Yes, that is. Yeah, that's.
And it's a decision to whether to play them groups, instead of, we just do this one here. And, grouping them like that as opposed to, just a continuous line.
So the.
Breaking them up.
Yeah. is to apply practicing stopping on different parts of the notes. So it's similar to the beat to beat practice, but this links up very nicely in terms of certain different rhythms. So when we have triplet rhythms, we can apply different transformations of the rhythm as one slow, two fast, or two fast, one slow. So then you practice stopping on that top note. And then your pinky will start to become a little more secure where it lands. So let's first try one slow, two fast. So we're gonna stop on the thumb, stop, fast, fast. That's the idea, but this time let's try not to hold the thumb longer than it needs to. Just for practice sake, let's not detach the pinky to the next thumb. So we won't be going, even though there is, you see like a little slur thing, we won't be doing that. Try to make it just. So, yes. Also, you're sometimes using 4 on some ones, right? So you're using 4 on the middle too, right? So whenever it's black key, you're using 4. Okay. There's a B flat in there, right? Yes. And then try the other rhythm there. So So doing those two rhythms will help you develop a connection between, will teach your hands the connection between each individual awkward position, and you practice in fast bursts, but with ease of mind, because you feel like you have time to just rest on each one of them, rather than playing, right? Because that's very tricky. Those two things will definitely help. And also just, you've done blocking practice, right? Yeah. That will also help. And applying a fast beat to beat practice to the blocking will help too. That as well. So you go from there to there, there to there, there to there, there to there. And you're teaching your hand how to start at any given point. And this beat to beat thing that I'm constantly preaching about is a fantastic tool for memory as well. So this is probably the yeah. So this beat to beat practice thing, the reason why it's so good for memory is when you're not looking at the score and you can't predict where you're going to make a mistake, right? It's impossible to predict. I mean, there are parts where you know where you might. Same. Me too. So like sometimes I begin a piece and I know the parts that I find difficult, and I know that if I don't feel good, I probably will have to fake through it. So those parts I'm like, yeah, I can probably make a mistake. But the parts that I think that are going to go well, and then maybe there's a mistake, or maybe there's a memory slip. Like I actually forget what the next note is. Then the terrifying thing is, because if all this time I've been practicing and have been cultivating a computer program of running smoothly, and then suddenly there's a different piece of information that gets brought in, adrenaline and anxiety, then all the rest of the consequent information gets like, what do we do now? How do we deal with that? We're on a different pathway now, like, we've never done this before. Yes. And so,
I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one.
so and then what happens is then you just forget it. You feel like you don't know how to play the piece anymore. And actually, if you look at it objectively, you don't know how to play the piece anymore because your body has never gone through that sort of intense situation of, this much adrenaline, this much pressure. I've never stopped at this place before, so I don't know how to continue. So your body's like, well, I have to go back to the beginning. And that's another scary thing, because what happens generally when you go back to the beginning? you
You
fear
go to
the
the same
moment.
spot and you fail again.
You fear the moment which made you stop. And so if we do, the way to combat that is to teach your body how to start at any given point in the piece. And this sort of systematic beat to beat or bar to bar, 2 bars for 2 bars thing, and learning how to start at each one really combats that sense of unfamiliarity when we do have certain hesitations or stoppings. I had this experience myself in a major competition in Singapore when I was doing my undergraduate study, and I was playing Beethoven's Emperor Concerto with an orchestra. It was at some point on YouTube. I just didn't put it. I didn't put it public. So it's been public but unlisted. Public unlisted because of this one moment in the piece. And there's this one moment where I'm playing Beethoven. Then for like 4 seconds I'm playing like Arnold Schoenberg. And this atonal thing. And the orchestra's like, huh? And just all they're doing is dun dun dun. Dun dun dun, and I'm playing this sequential dun 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 dun, and then the orchestra just sits there for 3 minutes and plays a beat 4, then waits for three beats and then beat 4, and then during that time when I'm playing by myself, I'm just splattering all over the keys, not knowing what I'm doing. Like I actually had forgot completely where my hands were meant to go, and so I was like, I gotta keep it going, just splattering around, playing random things. But then miraculously I was able to come back in on this, when the sequence comes in C minor, and of course mentally,
You knew where you were.
I was like, oh there goes first prize, and like, I have to do this for another 34 minutes. I just wanted to run off. Because there was only 7 minutes into the piece, out of like a 40-minute concerto. And so I was like, oh, I've got to pretend like I'm doing well. And so, if I didn't do that beat to beat practice, I probably would have just made the world's shortest Emperor Concerto performance. Like 8 minutes, boom, and just be like, because it wasn't even it was a competition. Like there was a public one, and it was with the Singapore Symphony Orchestra too. So it was a professional orchestra, professional conductor, not very sympathetic. They're like, oh, you messed up, bye bye, And so the one practice method that saved me was that beat to beat, that made me possible to get to the end of the 41 minutes. I managed to end up getting third prize, but I mean, for a big spot chuck like that, I think that's rather forgiving. So yes, all passages that give you a little bit of trouble, just break it down into tiny micro moments like that. And that will help you organize the beats a little better as well, and make you feel a little bit better about piecing things together. On average, it takes, sometimes I'll say, okay, I'll sit down, this prelude, I'll do beat to beat today. Sometimes if I were to play a piece of this length, this is probably around 1.5 to 2 minutes, right?
When somebody else plays it, it's 2 for me.
So somewhere between 1 to 2.5 minutes, I think, is a general average. Some people play it ridiculously fast, and some people play it on the laid back side too. A 2-minute piece beat to beat practice would generally take around at least 30 minutes, just going through it once. Everyone familiar with the Chopin Revolutionary Etude? Can I just show you You've heard that before. That was my undergraduate audition piece, and that piece is around roughly 2 to 3 minutes, like 3-ish minutes. And when I applied beat to beat practice to that, I would literally go. And just do it like. Just like that. And so I'll learn how to start on every single beat of every single measure, but that took me roughly 45 minutes to get through once. But I did that almost religiously for several months leading up to the audition. And what that does, especially with pieces that is like start, go, never stop, sort of pieces like that, that piece just has 16th notes from measure 1 all the way to measure like 200 or something. And so when you have a piece that, and this is actually very similar in the way that it never gives up. It just, you start and it's like, you don't have a place to breathe, right? You just go and you have to get to that end. When you have pieces that just have driving rhythm like that, this sort of systematic way of practice will definitely create much more fluency in that. And
So for this piece, would you tend to do one beat or one measure?
I think one measure would be,
Measure.
because yeah, it's, a lot of things don't line up nicely on the beat, right? Yeah, so one measure by one measure, and it's really difficult to know where to stop. Sometimes it's very difficult. Oh, it feels good, I'm going to carry on. Like, I'm just going to continue playing.
Okay, so just take this as an example.
Yes,
Would you play this note, or would you stop on that?
you would play that note.
You play this.
You play that, and then you stop, and you restart on that note. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Once you get really comfortable with that, then you can do the opposite, which is stopping before, and that creates a little bit of discipline as well. Because then it teaches you not to rush into the next beat. You just have to play tricks with your body. No matter what stage of development that you're in, yeah, I think it's a very powerful tool to be able to execute on the piano. It seems almost like a weirdly mechanical way of practice, but it does wonders for when you actually put in pressure. Yeah, but no, thank you so much. So, I have a copy of that already. Okay, and Elaine, right? Okay, what will you be playing for us today? Oh, beautiful. Wonderful. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Usually if it's good, I just once. Usually not five. Usually, if I find that there's a problem, then sometimes if I feel like, oh, this is too much of a large chunk for me, I would even break it down to half a beat to half a beat for that particular note. I knew one of my colleagues was learning the Rachmaninoff's third piano concerto, which is notorious for having tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of notes. And there was one particular measure apparently that he used to practice note to note. Like not even beat to beat, it was just so tricky that he had to go like da-da, 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 and it'll take like 10 minutes to play one measure. Like, because it was just so hard to play as a unit. But usually if you feel like it's secure from a certain beat to another beat, once is enough. Because it's not like you're going to do it once in your lifetime. It's something that you're going to like repeat. Like maybe today you're going to do it once, and then maybe 2 days later you do it again. So you don't need to like rinse and repeat, scrub like crazy. Like yeah. 5 times. Oh, muscle memory. Okay. Yes. Oh, well, I think that will definitely. I think that is probably better to do that. It's just time probably very time consuming. It's better to, and once you do that, you might get burnt out about ever doing that again. So to do that every day. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So let's hear Nocturne in C sharp minor. Believe it or not, I haven't played it, but I have recorded it once. Okay. Thank you for playing with it. It's such a gorgeous piece, and we really like the piece, don't we? Yeah, no, it's gorgeous. And, yes, it pierces deeply into the hearts of anyone listening. Like, it's such a gorgeous tune, right? Doesn't sound very musical of me to say this, but the first time I heard this was through the movie The Pianist. So I got into it through a movie, but because YouTube was my only way of sort of listening to all these sort of things. Because I didn't have access to like CDs and records and things like that, because family wasn't a big classical music listener. So just hunting on YouTube and then found this, and I was like, oh, what a good piece! Like it's so beautiful. To tap into that, based around what we've been saying, and actually it's similar to what I said to Wei about the right hand sort of deep sound. I think you can actually be a little more courageous in making the right hand not so quiet. What I mean by that is, even though, yes, overall the dynamic is like piano, pianissimo sort of realm, right? It's not like mezzo forte, forte extroverted melody, right? But let me show you one example of how to create a nice singing right hand while still making it sound piano. So here we have two different textures. We have left hand. Actually, the opening was very gorgeous, by the way. The way you played the first one, and then you played the second one, so slightly more mellow, unicorda. That was very nice. And the way you balanced the chords was very nice too. It's actually difficult to play all the notes without them not sounding. I've heard many conservatory students, like advanced conservatory students, play. They miss the bass note because they're trying to play too soft or something. So great job on that. Getting into this part now. Right hand, if you keep it at a piano dynamic, like that's around piano, right? Because of the sheer amount of notes in the left hand, the melody won't be able to carry it. Can you speak up a little bit? Yeah. So sometimes you have to play the melody closer to something like mezzo piano, mezzo forte plus, and it has to have that. And it depends on the piano too. Steinway is wonderful at doing this, and that sort of diamond quality sound. That sort of sound. Almost as though you're just dropping pearls or diamonds into like a really still this sound. So if you have this as a default sound and have left hand very shadowy. Two textures, it becomes something like you're creating atmosphere with this one and being extremely heartbreaking with this. you're going to try to make the left hand sound as atmospheric as possible, and I'll try to be as singing as possible. Okay, you can use the first two. Ready? Great. Let's switch it around. Okay? So now you're going to try to create that sound, and I'm going to try to be as atmospheric as possible. Okay? I'll use the fiddle this time. Okay? Go. Oh, ready. And isn't that gorgeous? Right? I think everyone's eyes just lit up in the room. That's like, yeah, that's the Chopin sound, right? Now the challenge. Oh, sorry, that was that was That's it. Yeah, bathe in that luminosity. There we go. And very good trims 3 and 4, by the way. It's very difficult to do. Yes. So, did that feel a little different to how you first played it? Physically, it almost feels like you're playing too loud in the right hand, right? A little bit. And in order to counter that, you just need to lower this left hand a little bit more. And that will create a composite dynamic of something closer to piano pianissimo.
It's hard to play the left hand quiet,
Oh,
because
yes.
then you can't get the note. I mean, the
Oh,
notes
yeah.
don't come out
Yes.
sometimes.
So you have to find the right balance of how much weight goes on the keys in that left hand, and once you get into the groove of how much weight you put in, you almost just do the same thing, just repeat it, and all your arm is doing is guiding your fingers to the right notes. So if you realize that this much pressure is enough to get a nice, oh, I kind of got it. So it's just this much pressure. Okay, then you're just going to replicate that with different maneuverings of the arm, and maybe if you want to give it a little bit more stress, maybe here. Then you can intensify the weight that you give, and then maybe loosen it. My predecessor used to say sometimes the weight like almost feels like someone's like you have all this weight, default weight on the key, and then when you play softer, it's like someone lifting out like the key. It's like there's less weight that's possible to get into the key. Yes, but default is you're in the key. It's just heavy, deep in the key. Yep, and then slow moving between each note will create a much softer dynamic. Because essentially slow attacks create softer sound, right? And so I think if you can try to tap into that high, bright luminosity of the right hand, then your left hand won't have to work as hard to try to create this texture. Yeah. But I think what you did with the right hand just then was very, very beautiful. Yeah. hopefully it doesn't go too against your vision of the piece, but I think that will speak to listeners, and if you're in a big concert hall, maybe several hundred people, that sound will reach to the last balcony seat and make someone that had a long day at work cry. Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you very much, Elaine. So we have, okay, so we're going to have to move a little bit. So we have Michelle and Emily, and will you also be playing?
Yeah, if there's time. Sorry, I had my daughter's middle school
Oh,
registration this morning.
What's your name, sorry?
Saba.
Saba?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Mine's a very beginner piece. It takes like 20 seconds.
Okay. We have the adieu,
Yeah.
and what will you be playing?
I'm playing a piece from Kosenko's 24 children's pieces. It's Mornings in the Garden.
That would be interesting to listen to. And you'll be playing?
Downton Abbey with the little intro.
Oh, cool. Okay, great. Okay, then let's have Michelle first.
So yeah, I'm playing L'Adieu by Irv Mueller.
It's from his 25 progressive studies.
Yes, yeah, correct. Good things that's happening, and I really liked how slow down worked here. It's very, very effective, I thought. Can we do the same thing towards the beginning here? Time slowing down. Okay, let's try from the beginning one more time. you almost want to have a almost never equal balance between the two parts. So when you do it in this situation where the melody has one single note, right? And left hand has these annoying repeated chords, right? That's very difficult to make it soft. In order to help yourself not to make that sound too loud, so to get that that sort of differentiation, just give a little more to that right hand. It's actually not that easy to play piano. It's not that easy to play forte with just one line. So don't be scared about playing quite moderately big at the beginning with the right hand, so that your left hand doesn't feel like it's being too intrusive. Okay, try this one time and feeling a little bit of weight lopsided to the right hand. Yep. You don't have to try to give it any extra force. And the dynamics will do itself automatically. The more repeated you play, it's just inevitable that it's just going to die down. Keep singing. Turbulence as well. I think when you do have the, you can play a little bit deeper in the key. It's getting a little bit fluffy. But still very even with the. Yeah. And then the same thing with the left hand here. You have almost triple the amount of notes the right hand does, right? So you actually have to feel as if your weight is tilted this side of the body. So the right hand's getting a lot of like heavy weight, and this is like super light. It's closer. The one thing to try to avoid is just a high shoulder. Try to get this relaxed. Too much attack on each note. So I think this sounds like. So the balance is great. Now the only thing you have to try to now, I think it's good to practice with trying to get used to that heavier right hand with the light hand. And then once you get used, right now, but I'm seeing a little bit too much wrist impulses with the right hand. But maybe it's good to practice that way for a bit, just so that you can feel the weight, the distribution of force.
Yeah.
And then start to eliminate the impulses with the right hand so that you can get a much singing. With the right hand.
Yeah,
So
one thing that I feel is when I kind of try to lean this way, that it actually.
the weight.
tighten, yeah.
Yes. So the weight, believe it or not, is not. Then what's been happening if you've been leaning and your legs been doing? It means that the weight's not going to your arm, it's going to your leg.
Oh, okay, got it.
So if you're leaning, it means that there's no difference in how much weight goes on here, because actually all your weight's down here.
So it's more the
more
upper
leaning,
body.
yeah, it's upper body stuff.
Okay.
So technically your leg should always feel no difference,
Yeah.
because if the correct amount of weight is going onto the key, the key should be holding up this way, not your legs.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So it's almost like someone, I'm not leaning on someone, right? When I lean on someone, usually my legs are okay, because I've got something to hold me up, yeah? Okay, that's
Okay,
probably
great.
all we have
Thank you.
time
Yeah,
for.
no,
Yes.
that's good.
Okay, we might be able to fit everyone in. Yes, okay. Let's hear this, it's from a children's piece thing or something?
So it's a Ukrainian composer, Victor Kosenko.
Okay.
He wrote these 24, he taught at the Kiev Conservatory
Oh, wow.
and wrote these pieces.
That's wonderful.
It's, you know, goes through all the major, minor keys, and so I've been working through them
That's wonderful.
like all semester, just going through.
I'm not familiar with this composer, so it'll be a treat to hear this.
Yeah. So this one is called Mornings in the Garden.
Mornings in the Garden. Okay, great. Because we were just at the end, can we just go to the very end? So,
Right, yeah.
the very end, how it's noted is you see a couple of low A's, A, rest, rest, A, rest, rest, A, rest, rest, and a full measure rest with a fermata. So, in order to really get that cheeky nature of this piece, you have to do a little bit of acting here. So you have to go be like, and then that 1 or 2 seconds of is quite magical. So, funny enough, not doing anything creates a lot of effect.
Yeah.
So just try the very ending. So don't let go of that. The piece is still going on, sort of feeling. And maybe have hands not down onto the keyboard button in the air. Yes, and then it's all people used to say, oh, you're like you're thawing out, like melting. So it's like freeze and melt, and then people go, oh, well, yes. And once that will really tie up the whole playfulness of this piece. Because one of the things that, if you did the opposite, and you did bum, 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 people will like, shy, or maybe they're nervous, or maybe they don't want to play this piece, or something like that. So if you really stick with it, stick with the character of this, there is a reason why the composer wrote a fermata, which is like a pause, on a measure, full measure of rest. That's part of the piece as well. So you have to practice the rest. Yeah. So if you can tie up the piece, that's like a nice tie up ribbon bow. Yeah?
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's a neat little piece. And you're playing a lot of the difficult parts of it really, really well. Yes, we do need to figure out some of the positional changes,
Yeah.
but a lot of the passage work is working really, especially the scales, is working really, really well too. The one thing that I think that one thing that you should note of is how long each left-hand note should be. Sometimes I feel like you're holding each chord a little bit too long.
Yes.
So maybe try from the very beginning and try to keep the left hand very consistent. So that's the long one, right? So this
Yeah.
one you're going to try to keep it
Oh,
short.
yeah.
Great, now can we have a little bit of lilt onto it? So we have accents on each one. So it's almost like kick-starting. So it's- Bouncing a step, yeah? So to get that three feeling. So whenever music is in any triple meter, has a nice lilt. 1, 2, 1, like the waltz, like, did we have any other piece in 3? Oh, we had no, that was in 2/4. The Gershwin was in 2/4. Although it feels almost like it's in 3. Yeah.
The way I play it.
No. It's just that it was almost like bass, middle, bass, middle. Yeah. It's
Three's in 9, so that's 3.
Well, actually, yeah, I guess that's also true. Yeah. So that that's like a deviation from a waltz sort of thing, but it's in 2/4, so it's like the Gershwin was good with rhythm. Yes. So if you can try to get that bouncing a step in that character, that immediately ties in with the ending, that cheekiness, playfulness nature. Did you have any specific questions about any or like parts that you found tricky that you're not quite sure how to figure out or anything like that?
So it's not tricky so much, but it's maybe kind of tricky to interpret
Okay,
in a
sure.
interesting way. So like going through here, we have like the kind of like the and so it's like especially with those E's at the top, but it's just like that those 4 measures is kind of like
You're like-
repetition, and
Yeah.
it's like there's not much going on here, but
Okay.
just kind of
There's many ways to
making
go
it
about this.
interesting.
There's no correct answer. Let me show you a couple of options of what we can do. So it depends on what you want to do here. So we're going to work backwards. So if we have our first character as something like that, like very bright. If you want this to even be more of a jubilant nature, because it's up an octave, right?
Right.
Then what we can do is use these E's to zoom into that character. So we can go, that's G sharp here. We can zoom into that character, or if you want the opposite of like almost having like
That's kind of what I've been doing. It's like a little softer and
Okay.
lighter.
Then in that case, we need to refrain from getting too soft too soon. So when we have, let's see. Is that right? Yeah. Maybe a little bit. So it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I have people go, two different ways. So if you want to do it the softer way that you do, maybe doing a little, almost like a little, not like full slowdown, but a little hesitation. It's almost like when I'm about to say an important word, I prep it by saying, "Be magnificent," blah blah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of a word, so I said blah blah.
Yeah, yeah.
So that would be a way to announce to the public, there it is again, but in a different feeling. Yeah?
Yeah, I think that was the only one. I think
Okay.
most of it is like nerves tripping over.
Oh,
yourself.
no, that's it.
But yeah, that was the only one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Yeah, and you can experiment with doing, because there's no right or wrong answer, I think, and the composer might have something different to say too.
Yeah.
And depending on, I think that's the beauty of interpretation, especially when there's nothing written there in terms
Right.
of dynamics,
Right.
but you know that that's the recall to the beginning, but it's the same notes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can play it different every time, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Right.
Thank you very much. So Downton Abbey, right?
Yeah.
So let's see what this looks like. Okay.
I'm just 15 months into my piano career, so it's
Okay. Again there. Hold the audience suspense. Just like dare to just make someone fall asleep by holding it that long. Just like yeah. Try just maybe the very last. Oh yeah, yeah. I think right hand is like here. Yeah. Yeah. Slowly lift it. And that does more than you think. That sometimes the ending makes or breaks the piece.
Yeah.
And when you're playing, and you're playing this actually very well, a lot of the emotional chords and things, you're going into really nicely. So you're getting the essence of this piece really nicely. Yeah? It will eventually go faster, right? Yes?
Yeah.
But currently I'm hearing, which is not a bad thing, I'm hearing impulses on every beat with the left hand. Eventually you would want to move those impulses to not 4 in a measure, but to 2 in a measure,
Okay.
and then later on 1 in a measure. So let me show you the difference between, so if I were to have impulse on every beat, it would sound like, it still sounds like a nice piece, but it sounds, you can sort of almost like head bob to it, which is maybe not the right emotional feeling to this particular tune. And then you want to shift it to every 2 measures. So 2 beats. It almost feels like it flows more, right? And then later on, when you get more and more comfortable with how this is going and how the melody is phrased, then if you go thinking about one measure sort of phrases. Then people will start to get this bigger sense of image. Then later on, maybe more than one measure, and then that's when people say, oh, you have a long phrase, you have good long phrasing, which would be like. And then people will be like, oh, you have a nice affinity for this type of music. So and it's all step by step. And that's achievable by going beat. This is not beat to beat practice. This is impulsing on each beat. You just have to stop there. It's better than every note, right? That's what younger children tend to do, is like impulse on every single note. And then they'll just tend to go up on every single one as well. And then you halve it to one beat, then to two beats. And you have to, this is something that you have to build up to make it natural. Otherwise, some people that skip this sort of process, what they tend to do is, it starts to sound very unorganized. It seems like they're trying to not play some sort of accent impulse, but then everything sounds a little bit jelly. Yeah? So it's good to have this really rigid scaffolding and framework, and then later taking it out so that you have the discipline to do whatever you want, the framework of the piece. Yeah. So experiment with putting different impulses. Yeah. And then that will, because already you're doing, and the melody is being sung nicely, you're playing the chords really nicely. I think there's just one note that you might need to check, which is this A.
Yeah,
You play a G there, right?
I might.
Yes. Which actually sounds quite nice too. Like the notes were meant to be this. But actually when you play G, it sounds nicer. It's, also, oh, that sounds nice. Even though it's not.
Let's say it's fucker.
Okay. There's a tasteful arrangement.
Well, I'll take that.
Yes. Okay. And then just really take your time, slowly lifting the pedal and just evaporating into silence. And then that will be really effective. Okay. Ready? I think there's something to learn from everyone's piece, something to learn and something to appreciate about everyone's performances today. And it's been an absolute pleasure. I don't know where the time has gone. It's just, I'm sorry for keeping you a little bit later, but it's a real pleasure for me. Thank you. So these are all the recital pieces that will be played?
No,
Oh, different.
hopefully different.
Wow.
What's the deal with that?